welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Fabienne, DC lifestyle content creator, travel, fitness, wellness, health, faith, all of the things. But today what we're talking about is solo traveling. So I've been solo traveling for the past few years, and I just wanted to come on and give some tips about safety and just about your journey, things you can do, all of that. So let's start with the basics. Number one, I would of course consider safety. Safety is the biggest thing, especially if you're a woman, even if you're not a woman, but of course you want to be safe. So the first thing I would recommend is choosing a destination that is relatively safe. So for example, when I went to Barbados, Barbados was one of the countries in the Caribbean that had like the lowest crime rate. And then you could also look up places that have a lot of solo travelers. So if you even go on TikTok and you type in like solo travel for women, you'll see multiple destinations pop up. Puerto Rico, Curacao, Guatemala has been popping up recently. So places in the Caribbean, places in Europe, some places in Africa. So the number one thing is to do your research on what places are safe. And you could just, of course, fact check the crime rate. You can fact check, the locations and the things surrounding the locations that will make it easy for you to travel. So for example, if you are going to a destination, let's say Puerto Rico, when I went to Puerto Rico, I stayed 10 minutes away from the hotel. So even though I got in fairly late, it was only a 10-minute ride from the hotel to the airport, vice versa, versus traveling an hour away from, the airport or what have you. And then there's a lot of things in that area too that was central, so I could easily walk to certain places or always have someone there. So safety is a big thing. So 100% just make sure you are looking up places that are safe. So I've been to Puerto Rico, Guatemala, Curacao, trying to think of the other places. And all of those places I did research, and I'm back home, so I'm guessing it was safe. Another thing as far as safety is sharing your location. So I want to say like 3 of my best friends have my location, or 4, they have my location. So that way, whenever I land or what have you, they know where I am. So they have my location. They're able to, of course, see where I'm going. And then I'll have like 2 people who I share my itinerary with. So when I went to Guatemala, my best friend Nordell and Nadia knew like my exact itinerary. So when I was going to, this place that was 3 hours away, they knew that that was where I was supposed to be that day. So if that was different on my location, they would be like, what are you doing? Or they can be if they're checking the location. Also, sometimes I would tell them like, hey, this is my check-in time. If I don't check in with you by 5 p.m. today, call me, like message me, something. Like make sure you are keeping in contact with someone every day of the trip, because that's important as well. So that way people can say, the last time I spoke to her was like 3 p.m. at this time and she was here. So that is something important to note. Another key piece would be, like I said, sharing the itinerary, sharing your location, and sharing your accommodations. So they should know that I'm going to be at this hotel. This is the hotel I'm staying at. This is the time I'm checking in. So that way, if God forbid something happens, they could always say like, well, she checked in at the hotel this day, this place, and people know where you are. That's the biggest thing. People knowing where you are, like people you actually know and care about you. So just make sure you have those affairs in order. Another safety tip, of course, like I just mentioned, a hotel. Airbnb is cute, but as a solo traveler, I typically recommend a hotel. Why? So with an Airbnb, again, oftentimes that is a person renting out their home, leasing out their home. Sometimes the Airbnbs can be misleading, meaning someone can be in the home and you're in like a subset of the home, so they still have access. Like it could be kind of dangerous just if you are like 20 hours away from home, like across the globe, and this specific Airbnb that's in the wilderness or someone else has access to it. It's just not as safe as a hotel. So I would recommend, if you are a female solo traveler, to stay at a hotel. And that way people know where you are and you have like just more safety nets in place. If you are staying at the hotel or even the Airbnb, one thing that I do like to use is this door stopper. And I think I'm gonna make a separate video on all the electronics that I bring on vacation. But one thing I would recommend is this door stopper. So with this door stopper, not only you put it under the door and it should stop the door from opening. I forgot where the battery is, so it's not gonna sound off right now, but it also rings when the door is being open or when it's being pressed down. So that is just something that you could do if you're at a hotel or whatever. Put it under the door. If someone tries to open the door, it will give you some time to hear the alarm go off. It'll give you some time for the alarm to go off, and also for the person to try to like struggle with the door a bit. So just something that you could use. And there's of course low, medium, and high. Let me get it right here. So yeah, so this is something that, you know, I recommend if you are solo traveling as well. So again, with safety, just make sure people know where you are, choose somewhere safe, and try to do things that are local initially. Like if this is your first trip, I would say, like, if you're gonna go to, let's say, a Puerto Rico, that you try to do things that are like 10, 15, 30 minutes out from your central location. Then when you have more confidence, you can of course veer out a little bit more. So that is number one. With that being said, you can have some type of anxiety just because you are in a foreign place, especially if it's a place where you don't know the language. So if you're going somewhere where it's a different language than what you speak, I would recommend getting the Google Translation app. That one I used a lot when I went to Brazil. So in Brazil, they speak Portuguese, of course. And so with that being said, a lot of times if you want to translate like at restaurants or excursions, you need to make sure that you're able to, like, you know, communicate. So definitely get that one. That is very important. Get the Google Translation if you're going to a different country with a different language. Another thing is, of course, is knowing where the embassy is. So in Curacao, I don't know if you guys watched my vlog, but if you didn't, go watch my vlog. In Curacao, there was this whole mishap with my passport, and one of the biggest things is I needed to go to the US Embassy. So luckily I knew where it was, and of course, like, the hotel staff, they knew where it was, so that was a good thing. I was able to go there, just because you never know, whether it's like a passport issue or what have you, you want to be able to go there. So that is important. Know where the embassy is. Another thing that I would recommend is knowing like your palate and knowing your stomach. So when you're going to certain places, like especially if they have like street food and things of that nature, if you're a person who has like a soft stomach, meaning like anything you ingest is giving you the runs, you're sick, what have you, be cognizant of that, because the last thing you want to be on your solo trip is sick the entire time, or needing to go to like a hospital or things of that nature. So be cognizant of like the foods you decide to eat, the places you decide to go, just because that is also important. So when you are going somewhere else, I recommend carrying cash, and that's in their currency. And of course, you can also have your card. So I have a couple of travel cards that I use because there are no foreign transaction fees, but I also make sure to get cash. Number one, some places don't take US currency or cards, and two, sometimes it's just easier and better to do the conversion with dollars that you already have. And when I say dollars, I mean their currency. So for example, when I went to Cartagena, they would quote us like $200 for something, and then once they saw that we were going to use a card, they would then say like, oh no, it's actually 400, stuff like that. Or in Thailand, certain places did not accept the card. For example, if you were taking a taxi or what have you, you would need to actually have baht. So I recommend going to your bank, exchanging however much money you think you're going to use based on the itinerary you think you have formulated for yourself, and then take that and then go to the place you're going to. One thing, especially if you're a solo traveler, you don't want to be anywhere where you don't have any funds, or you feel stuck, or you can't move the way you want to move. That could be very scary, so you just want to be prepared, okay? Another thing I would recommend doing is looking up excursions where you can meet people. So one excursion that I did in Puerto Rico, it was fly dining. So I was able to meet other people and families during the experience. Now, when you're doing these experiences, some people are going to ask like, oh, why are you here alone? You do not have to divulge that you are solo traveling, okay? Sometimes I will literally say like my friend got sick, or they didn't want to do this certain activity, like it's not their speed, what have you. Be very cautious of telling people like, hey, I'm solo. In Curacao, I did meet another fellow solo traveler, but she was like a woman. She was also solo traveling, all that other stuff. So we were able to do stuff together and it was fine, but just be like very aware. So that's another thing, be hyper aware of your surroundings. So when you are leaving places, put your phone up, unless you're like, of course, recording to get content, get your content, girl. But if you are like just trying to text and do all this other stuff, no, be aware of your surroundings. If you're leaving that cafe, if you're leaving this space, plop that phone in there. If you are taking an Uber, make sure you are looking at the license plates. Make sure you are telling your friend, hey, I just got into this Uber, what have you. So be very aware of your surroundings, just because you never know like who is watching or what can happen. That's how I see it. My mom has drilled that in my mind that anything can happen. So just make sure you're aware of that. Along with not necessarily telling people that you are solo traveling alone, another thing would be like posting in real time. So let's say you went to, or you're going to Portugal, and you are at this specific restaurant. You want to tag it and get the aesthetic vibes and all of that. Wait until you are gone to tag and post all of that. Some people altogether won't post that they're at a specific place until they've left the entire vacation. So that is another thing that you can consider. But definitely when you are at the specific place, like just make sure you are gone. Okay. So another thing we're going to include is transportation. So it is important to set up your transportation, or know what kind of transportation the country or place that you're going to has. So for example, certain countries don't have Uber, but they'll probably have like Grab or something. So for example, Thailand has Grab. So you can set up Grab just like you would Uber on the phone, and you're able to do that. Or some countries don't have any of those services and they only use like taxis or private drivers. So if you go to places like Turks, they don't use Uber. So in that case, sometimes I would recommend trying to find a personal driver. So someone who has been vetted, someone who, is like a professional driver. So that way, as like a, solo traveler, you have your set person who's taking you from A to B, and you can also share that contact with the same people who you're sharing the accommodations and your location with. If it's a place that doesn't really use, let's say, Uber or even personal taxis, and they use like train systems and all of that, I would just try to learn like the train system. So that way, I'm like aware of where the trains are going, how am I getting to the destinations and locations that I want to get to. So just make sure you know how to get around. Like, are you walking? Do you need a personal driver? Do you need, to take the train certain places? Do you need to have a new app on your phone? Make sure you're aware of that. So make sure you do that type of investigation. Another thing is communication. So with your phone, like my phone, I have an international plan, and that's just because I travel all the time. So more likely than not, when I go to a different country, I'm able to use my phone, thank God. But if you're a person who doesn't have that, sometimes you need to buy a SIM card. So see the country you're going to, see if you're able to use your phone, all of that, because then all the other advice I gave about like the location and communication, that won't matter because you won't be able to use your phone. So see if the country that you are going to, if you need to buy a SIM card. That was a big thing for Thailand. Like a lot of people said to do that. Luckily, again, I have an international plan, so I'm able to use my phone, and I was able to use my phone there. But yeah, just make sure you are aware of how you'll be able to communicate and if you need to go and get the SIMs and things of that nature. So keep that in mind as well. One of my last takeaways is just being self-sufficient. So if you're a person who struggles with being self-sufficient, meaning that you need everyone else to like solve something for you, you have to call your mom every time something goes wrong because you need them to like fix it or what have you. You kind of want to become self-sufficient before going on your solo trip. Reason being, anything can go wrong, whether that is from your flight, the hotel, the excursions, the food, injuries, you name it. So if you're not a person who can think quick for themselves and, hey, this is what I should do, this is what should happen, let me try to figure this out, it might be difficult for you to go on the solo trip just because you don't have like that instinct to problem solve. Not saying that you can't go on a solo trip, just make sure you try to tune that up before going, because again, anything can happen, and you just want to make sure that you are like self-sufficient and able to handle situations as they come. But if you guys want more like travel tips, travel guides, just travel content, let me know. I definitely plan on making more videos, and I plan on seeing you guys in another one. So if you like this content, make sure that you like, comment, share, subscribe, all of the things. Besos.